Hello everyone. Meaning of life and chemical happiness are subsections of the second last chapter from his famous book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. In the last sessions, we had looked at how Harari equates happiness with chemical happiness, that is, the coursing of certain biochemical substances and hormones through the body. This pleasant feeling induced is equated with happiness. Now, in this section, the meaning of life, we're going to look at how chemical happiness and the meaning of life relate. This Huxley's dystopian novel, Brave New World, is a dystopia. A dystopia is the opposite of utopia. And utopia is an ideal place, like everything is and something that you aspire to. And a dystopia is completely opposite to that. It refers to an imagined place or state where everything is unpleasant or bad. So it's usually kind of totalitarian or maybe environmentally degraded. Now, The Brave New World by Aldous Huxley was published in 1932. And this was at the time of the Great Depression, that an economic meltdown that happened, especially in the US between 1929 and 1939. And in this novel, happiness is the supreme value. There's psychiatric drugs, synthetic ones like soma, are administered to the people so that they feel happiness. Now, happiness in this sort of a way is, according to this book, produced without harming their productivity and efficiency. Now, if these people are really happy, these people are not going to come out, participate in any strikes, or there won't be any wars, there won't be any revolutions. All the people are supremely happy and content. So this replaces police and ballads as foundations of politics. This kind of a world is imagined in Huxley's Brave New World. Now, this is even more monstrous, that is dangerous and scary than George Orwell's 1984. George Orwell's 1984 is also a dystopian novel. It was published in 1949. It was about a totalitarian and all-surveilling state where you have the big brother always watching you. Both Huxley's world unsettling. It's a disconcerting world. Disconcerting means something that causes one to feel unsettled, something which causes you to become uncomfortable. So this is based on the biological assumption that happiness equals pleasure. What is wrong with this kind of a thought? When you think about happiness is equal to pleasure, there are ethical concerns related to this. Again, I would like to call your attention to the previous section where we talked about how biochemical mechanisms in the body condition us in such a way that our limits are kept. Limit of happiness and how far we'll go in happiness or how down we'll go, all that is kept according to that person's predisposition, something that is given by genetics. And here, if you want to have happiness all the time, it is impossible because when you administer drugs, you become happy, and after that again you go back to your level of happiness. So if you need to be happy on a long scale, then you need to have some way to manipulate your biochemical system. Now that is certainly not desirable. So if you take this definition of happiness, it has been contested by many scholars. And that's mentioned here in Harari is Daniel Kahneman. He is a Nobel Prize winner in economics. And he conducted a study where you are required to recount a typical day. You think about your normal day and think about all the enjoyed moments, all the moments that you liked a lot, and all the moments that you disliked. Let's look at an example and we'll get a more clearer idea. Now, if you think about the process of raising a child, there are moments of joy and there are moments of drudgery. Drudgery, hard work, dull work. You look at children throwing tantrums, you're changing soil, diapers, dishes. Doing dishes, these are not something exactly which you equate with happiness. But what we find Parents usually say that children are their chief source of happiness. Now that is paradoxical. How do you find that all these kinds of disliked moments, these moments of drudgery, hard work, dull work, is equating with happiness in the long run? That is why the findings of the study are paradoxical. So, if you take another option, what you find is that happiness is not the surplus of pleasant moments. So, even if you have a lot of unpleasant moments or disliked events mounting up, happiness is what you find if you see life in its entirety. When you look at the life as a whole, you find that life is meaningful and worthwhile. This can be considered only when you think, when you think ethically, when you think something related to moral principles. You can't just go on and do something because it is pleasurable to you and harm somebody else. So that is an ethical question. You can't harm another person so that you can get pleasurable sensations in your body. So understand through thought, these ethical questions and cognitive questions are all related, and you need to see life in entirety to find out what is valuable in life. So it makes a whole lot of difference, what values we have. If parents choose to see parenting as slavery to the baby dictator, or they see themselves as lovingly nurturing a new life, both of those kinds of attitudes, determines how happy that parent is. And usually you find the balance tilting towards the pleasurable, happy parenting model. You have a proper why to live, then how you live also becomes bearable. And if you look at the history of happiness, people, we have seen in the last section, it's the medieval times also, people were happy, are happy. Now also, I hope you remember that example of the medieval peasant and the Parisian banker. Both of them were able to experience happiness of similar levels. So the history of happiness has been turbulent, and it does not favor modernity in any sense of the word, because if in the modern world you have all kinds of gadgets and devices that make your life easy, but you are not experiencing a new high of happiness. A medieval man would have found the same happiness when maybe he had a particularly good catch when he went for hunting. So happiness does not favor any particular kind of life. Here, Harari talks about medieval people and how medieval people were happy because they found meaning in their life, in their belief in the promise of everlasting bliss in the afterlife. And this meaning in life made their life more meaningful and worthwhile. And modern secular people, it's usually equated with atheism, and you find that when people have nothing to expect in the long term, life becomes meaningless, and there's this oblivion. Oblivion is the state of being unaware of or unconscious of what is happening around us. So this actually is the kind of comparison between medieval and modern secular people that Harari makes. And he says that if you ask them the question, these both set of people, are you satisfied with your life as a whole, that earlier questionnaire of subjective well-being that we talked about in chemical happiness, people in the medieval times are more likely to say that they are happy rather than the people who live in modern secular times. So our medieval ancestors were happy because they found some meaning to their life. And these meanings, we can argue, are based on delusions. Now, what are delusions? A delusion is a belief or impression that is maintained despite being contradicted by reality or rational arguments. You can't sometimes prove some of these things, but again, it is still believed very strongly. So the medieval people believed in the afterlife, and if you think about it, This is something which science has always disproven. From a purely scientific point of view, human life has no meaning. Now, you're living on this planet Earth, and this Earth is going around the sun. If the Earth suddenly blows up one day, nothing is going to happen to the universe, the solar system. Everything will go on as it was before the Earth was there. So there's no cosmic plan, there's no divine plan according to which the human life or the whole solar system or the universe is working according to science. So human subjectivity will not be missed, or human beings will not be missed, is what Harari says. So any meaning that people ascribe or any meaning which people give to their lives is just a delusion. So medieval people found meaning in life because of afterlife, and maybe modern people try to find meaning through humanism, nationalism, capitalism, but all of these are just delusions. If medieval people found happiness by reading scriptures, modern people find happiness in their own ways. Like the scientist thinks she is increasing knowledge, so that's the meaning of her life. The soldier finds that if he fights for the homeland, he's defending the homeland, so that is the meaning of his life. And an entrepreneur finds meaning in building a new company. Perhaps happiness is synchronizing one's personal delusions of meaning with the prevailing collective delusions. That is, as long as the people around also believe in the similar kinds of delusions, then I'm happy. Harari concludes by asking the question, does happiness really depend on self-delusion? Thank you.